one of the worries is this year and in future years is the amount of hockey that's being played by players, and they definitely have to have some time off, and that's very difficult in Belgium and Holland, where they go from international back to club and then back to international, and it seems that the season is never ending. So we really do have to take control of or take care of our players and making sure that they're not playing too much. Otherwise, they're going to burn out, and we're going to have some very short careers.
Welcome to Studio Hockey.
So, hello everybody. We have with us today a new guest from where I'm sitting, way down under. Colin Batch, the head coach for the Kookaburras, the Australian national men's team. I think still the number one in the world, or at least very close with Belgium, and the defender of the Pro League title, which is about to start again. Colin, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you, Ernst, and it's afternoon here, but good morning to you.
Thank you very much. Well, not many people might know, or probably the older ones who follow hockey for a longer time. But you've not always been a coach; you've been a player as well back in the days, and not such a bad one either.
Very long time ago.
Yeah. So let's just dive in with the number one question. You know, as a player, and as a coach, what it takes to win gold. You won as a player. You won the World Cup gold yourself. As a coach, you were in the coaching staff when Australia won the gold in, I think it was Athens.
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah. So, what does it take to win gold for Australia in Tokyo this summer?
Wow, that's a very complex question.
Yeah, let's just start right away with it.
Yeah, exactly. Look, it's not easy. I think that's the first thing. We saw in Rio that a number of teams could have won the gold medal heading into, or had those aspirations heading into the Rio tournament. And I think we find again for Tokyo the depth in men's hockey is very strong. So it's not easy to win. That's the first thing, and a number of teams can have genuine claims to having the title. So I think what we need to do is break down the tournament, and firstly you have to qualify for the quarterfinal, and this is the tricky bit, because you might do all the right things and be playing very well, and your crossover from the other pool can be a very difficult quarterfinal. Mm-hmm. So that's out of our control. We're aiming to qualify for the quarterfinals firstly, and then play well enough to win that, and then advance from there. But I think Tokyo does present some unique issues. One of them, of course, is the climate. We're expecting it to be very hot.
Yeah.
So I think all of the nations will be, certainly aware of that. Very difficult conditions to play under, and just having a look at most teams that are playing there, they play 4 games in 5 days, which is extremely difficult in any circumstances, let alone coping with the high demands of the climate in Tokyo. There is
plus only 60 players, plus only 16 players instead of the usual.
And only 16 players, and it's certainly disappointing that. At a hockey's major tournament that we're reduced by 2 players. So from a physical point of view, it's going to be very demanding in those conditions. So all teams need to be physically strong, and that's one side of it, of course, but technically and tactically, I think you need to find an edge there. And, if we have a look around the world, I think hockey's never been in a stronger position than what it is now. The technical skills of the players it's fantastic.
Yeah, agree. It's and especially the top nations are in my belief have never been as close together as in these days. There are for me there are. There are four nations who just they can aim for gold. 4 nations at least have every right to say that we'll only be happy if we won gold in Tokyo, and I think that's quite a special situation.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a bit too early to say who they would be, but you might be braver than I.
I'm always braver than that in predicting things, and mostly wrong as well.
Yeah, but it'll be an outstanding tournament. We've visited Tokyo. The number 1 pitch is tremendous. The number 2 pitch, similar pitch, but just a smaller stadium. And I'm sure it'll that sort of environment will certainly have a great outcome to the quality of hockey, both in men's and women's.
I think that probably the top teams will all be at more or less similar fitness levels. But will there be teams or nations who have a little bit of an advantage because of this climate, you think? Or does it matter if you're really used to it because it's going to be that special?
Yeah, look, I tend to support what you're saying there. I think most programs around the world now have such quality in their preparation that there's not much difference between the physical side of it. We know that there's only a certain amount you can do from a recovery point of view, and I think everyone will be on top of that. So the games really are in the technical side and also the tactical side of the game.
No, absolutely. You have quite a different team from the golden years of Australia, where back in the days you had several truly unique star players with the likes of Jamie Dwyer or Mark Knowles or guys like that. Whereas today it seems that it's more about the team, though obviously you still have some great players at your disposal. But is this by design or more a sign of the times or just coincidence?
Oh, look! If you have a look at Jamie Dwyer, that's once in a generation player. You'd love to have him play on, but he went to 4 Olympics and he was an outstanding player for Australia. And that sort of quality player doesn't come along very often. So we have got some very good players in our team. They're still learning. We've got some experience in our team, but by and large, we are still a young team developing. And a lot of our players have come out of the last Junior World Cup at the end of 16. Look, they're very coachable. Firstly, they want to learn, so they've got a lot of good qualities to have involved in a team. And look, you don't want to be relying on one person. So we're happy to have a large group of our players all playing at a good level to support each other and play well as a team.
But as a coach, would you prefer to have one Jamie Dwyer-like type of player or 3 very coachable, very good, very dependable players like a lot of the youngsters that are coming through now for you?
Well, it's hard to knock back a Jamie Dwyer, isn't it? Look, Jamie, he became a big-time player and he was a catalyst for many championship wins for the Kookaburras over the years. So you'd never say no to a player like that. But, Australia never just relied on Jamie Dwyer. Certainly he finished very well and, maybe there's people remember the finishing qualities of Jamie Dwyer, but his work rate around the ground and his ability to get the ball back from a defensive point of view was also very good. So, you weren't just thinking of Jamie Dwyer in his attacking qualities. He's a very good defender as well. So, look, you want an all-round team, a team that all play together and they understand the defensive side of the game as well as being very strong on the counter-attack. I think, if you can establish those sorts of parts to your game and also develop that quality in your game, then you'll have some success.
Yeah. Did it help in your from your own words, still developing and still a young team? Did it help that last year that you won the Pro League, because a winning experience is also something that you need? in the build up to an event like Tokyo?
Yeah, absolutely. I really do think that, because in 18 we won the Champions Trophy with many changes to our team, but we're always looking for improvement, and I think that's what the Pro League gave us last year. That when we ended up being on the road, when we were playing in Europe and also Argentina and New Zealand, we did quite well, and I think that can happen when you've got a team that spends a lot of time with each other. We're finding that with Belgium at the moment, even though they've just started. I think they'll continue to improve on tour when the players don't have any other distractions apart from training and recovering and playing hockey.
Okay. And speaking about Belgium, look who just joined our conversation here. Our listeners can't see it yet, but normally we can see it on our screen. Shane McLeod, head coach from Belgium, is in the room. Shane, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can. Sorry I was so late.
No, not a problem. Not a problem. Welcome in our conversation. We were talking about the Pro League win from Australia last year, and the way that it might help the younger and the still developing team, as Colin put it, for getting also this winning experience ahead of Tokyo. But what were your expectations, Collins, when you entered the Pro League last year? For you, it was the only priority that year, which probably is different from most European teams who also had the European Cup. Did that make a difference for you?
No, in actual fact, our priority was to qualify for the Olympic Games. So even though we did well at the Pro League, there's no reward for it at the end. And it would be good to link that with the World Cup qualification or a Olympic Games qualification. It doesn't allow that at the moment in our sport, but that would be a good thing, I think, and give more credibility to what is already a very good tournament to play in.
Yeah, absolutely. Shane, we discussed earlier before that you came online. We discussed also the very specific climate conditions that your teams will be meeting up in Tokyo. What are the ways that you prepare for that? You're in Sydney, so you're experiencing some specific climate conditions as well over there. I hope you're not too much bothered by the fires and the air pollution that's coming from it. But what are you doing to prepare for those climate conditions in Tokyo with Belgium?
I think it's no secret to any of the teams that it could be a really testing time, and I think the teams that don't deal with the heat or don't have some sort of things in place may struggle a bit. But we've got a relatively experienced team in those type of conditions. They don't often play in the Aslan Shah or something like that in Malaysia, which I think would be an ideal training ground for the type of conditions that we might face. But we've got a few things in place in Belgium. Based around just getting used to the heat. We've tested the players that really struggle, and we'll be doing some special things or paying special attention to those players to help them adapt. But we'll go into the village or into Tokyo relatively early so that we can make those final things. And it's just little stuff, but a whole lot of little stuff hopefully will help.
Yeah, it is interesting, Shane, isn't it, where you've got some players that don't play as well in those conditions, and through some testing you find that out that it's not so easy the really hot weather, which we're expecting. Right,
and also the game style can sometimes be a bit different as well. Like I remember watching a few tournaments from Malaysia, and when you're there and when you're playing them or involved in them, you think the style of hockey is really fast and so on. Because of the amount of effort that's going in, but sometimes the game's a bit slower than you remember, and there's a few things like that we're mindful of. And with the Olympics as well, it's also a challenge because you have a couple of fewer players as well. So it really is going to be a bit of a test of some of the programs and how well they deal with those type of things.
Absolutely. Well, Shane, you've got some players who were there in Beijing already, where there were also very, very trying conditions in a climate way. Are they bringing their experience to the rest of the team in this matter?
Yeah, they are. But it was kind of like sometimes the things get exaggerated a little bit. Like I think Beijing in the end didn't turn out to be the conditions or as bad as everyone had predicted them to be, and it would be nice if the same thing happened with Tokyo. But I think everyone's preparing for the worst case scenario, and if it's better than that, then you're going to be okay. But you just don't want to be caught out by incredible heats and you haven't done anything about it. I think with the thing that probably gives me a little bit of confidence is we don't have too many absolute newbies coming into the group. I think that can catch you out a little bit, and we know what we've got is what we've got in regards to those that heat up a bit more or those that lose a lot of salts and those things. So you can manage those, but if you haven't got someone that's toured before or something, then it's a little bit tougher, and you have to just pay a bit more attention to those.
And what are your thoughts about that, Colin? Will it be difficult for a newbie to? Well, it's always difficult for a newbie to make the selection, especially if you're a strong team. But is this an extra added factor to it that it will make more difficult for them to join a team because they're not used to these kinds of conditions?
Well, just not having much experience in a leading up to Olympic Games and then playing Olympic Games in itself is very difficult. So, yeah, I agree with Shane. And you add on to that, some players just can do it. But if you've played a lot of your hockey as a junior in cool climate and suddenly you're playing at, the most important tournament in those conditions, it's very difficult for sure. So I think, through some testing, like Shane was saying, you find out which ones struggle in the heat. You can find out a lot of information before you actually go there. And I think that in itself forms part of the selection for the final 16.
I guess that for most of the top teams, you're really well equipped, well staffed with a lot of scientists on board who can tell you all these things of salt and losing of water and all these very scientific stuff about playing in these kinds of conditions. Some countries probably don't have the budget to hire these experts and do all this kind of testing. Will this be a disadvantage for them?
Well, there's a lot of information you get over the net these days. So it might not be hands-on with someone working with your team, but you can get a lot of the basics correct from information that you can read about, or maybe another sport within your Olympic committee can share some of their findings, and that can assist in the preparation a great deal. There are some things, within Australia. The first time we played in Darwin, this was 20 years ago, that there's a lot of things that we learned from that experience that still hold true today. So, yes, we are fine-tuning things, and yes, we've got a more scientific manager to look after that, but I think the fundamentals are still the same about, the way you block out the heat, you train in the heat, your recovery, your hydrating. Those things have been around for a long, long time.
Shane, I remember that ahead of Tokyo, Belgium was really novel in their preparations, where they put up a dome at the club in Belgium, where they could imitate the climatic conditions they were thinking to meet in Beijing at the time. Is this kind of stuff you're going to do again as well?
Oh, look, we're probably not going to go to the same extreme as that. We'll look at little gains that we can make all over the place. But and I think Colin would agree. In the end, it's going to come down to playing hockey and so on. You just want them in conditions that they can play at their best or close to the best. So, we won't exaggerate things, but we'll just be really mindful if we can put some effort in something it's going to make a difference, then we'll do that. We don't want too many gimmicky things that look good in the press, or there's a lot of effort for very little gains. We won't do that. We'll invest our time and money into something else. But we've done a bit of research and things that are meant to represent good practice and best practice, and we'll implement those for sure. But there won't be too many gimmicky things happening.
No, okay. The Pro League is about to start, and you guys will be playing each other for the first game. A repeat from the final from last year. Well, it's always exciting to watch top nations play each other. I guess this year, though, the Pro League will be a little bit less attractive and more a practice environment for the main ticket of Tokyo. Or are you seeing this differently, Shane?
Oh, look, I think what you're dealing with when you're looking at high performance sport is you're going to have two teams that are incredibly competitive people and competitive athletes. So I think it's always going to be a fantastic game when Belgium play Australia. But I just think probably the focus of or the pinnacle event is probably going to be Tokyo, without a doubt. And I think both Australia and Belgium will be preparing to be at their best then, not necessarily the first game we play. But having said that, there's so much talent on display that I would suggest it's going to be a fantastic game and a fantastic couple of games, and be really nice to be involved with them. But I think both Colin and I would agree if we lost both games here, but beat each other in the Olympic Games, that we'd be pretty happy with our year. So
yeah, I agree with that, Shane. Look, I think just to reinforce some of those comments from Shane, that it'll be a fantastic opportunity for the Australian public to watch these games live. Number one in the world, versus number two in the world, and there's hardly any points between the two sides. So, and if we look at it, Tokyo, both teams have high expectations leading into Tokyo. So it'll be great to watch it on TV, but even better to watch it live. So I think it's a fantastic start to the Pro League in Australia. We're expecting high-quality matches, even though the players probably, they've had a short break over the Christmas period. But they'll be very competitive out there in a week's time.
But still, would your year be considered a loss if you don't have 2 gold medals?
I'll be happy with the one in Tokyo. So, look, the Pro League, what the Pro League offers this year is that you get to play most of the top or all the top nations before the Olympics. So you get a gauge about where you are and where you sit and how teams have improved since the last time we played them. But yeah, as good as the Pro League will be, and it has been a great advertisement for our sport right around the world. The number one aim for all the countries is to play well and be successful in Tokyo.
So everybody playing the Pro League will be considering this more or less a prep towards Tokyo, yeah. But is it an advantage for a team like Australia that you don't have to consider your club leagues or your domestic leagues in those lead up to Tokyo, where Shane has a lot of players who are also heavily involved in the European domestic leagues, and have to split their attention a little bit between clubs and national teams. Colin, do you consider it a big advantage to have a centralized program?
Well, one of the dilemmas that we always have is that the number of matches that you play. So I can see both sides of the question here, that it's good to play high quality club matches. There's always a risk with injury, of course. We don't want that, but we're playing a competitive sport, and it will happen. As opposed to, we're pretty busy all the way through until April, and then after that, we haven't got so much at the moment. So we'll be lacking a little bit of match play by the time Tokyo comes around. So that's the two sides of the story for sure.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Like, I think that one of the things that's develops the players in Europe is such a competitive domestic competition, and having that consistency of quality games week in, week out. I think that's that's one of the pillars of why Belgium and Holland do quite well at the moment. But the advantage of being centralised as Australia is, and we're kind of halfway in between, because we have a bit of a shorter season, shorter than Holland, and so we're together 4 days of the 7. So we're kind of trying to do what Australia have been able to do for a number of years, and we've still been able to keep pretty good domestic competition. So, we're trying to get a balance, because I think, as Colin said, there are pluses in having a centralised program, but there's also some advantages in the guys being able to play in a different competition as well. So, yeah, I don't think there's a perfect setup. I think everyone's trying to work towards that.
Yeah, you can prepare your team a little bit different, but the end result is that you want them to be playing at their best in the middle of the year in July. So, there are different ways of getting there. So I'm sure, Shane, you've been through it a few times already. Firstly with New Zealand and the way their preparation was for London, and now with Belgium. So, it's dealing with what you've got in front of you. Whether you've got very experienced players and how much you should push them as opposed to some of the younger players you can do a little bit more with.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that with being creative and as you said, getting the teams to peak at the right time is the key. Whether you haven't got enough games or if you got too many, I think.
Still, we see in several nations, including Australia now, the rise of short period of domestic leagues, like the new hockey one you have now in Australia. Would you prefer to have those kinds of shorter domestic leagues and to be able to combine it in a more flexible way with the international program? Or would you consider the longer running traditional style European leagues to be better than those short leagues for domestic hockey?
Well, the shorter the hockey one season, for us it was great. Again, it was about the promotion of our sport within Australia, and it fit into it's the end of the football season here, and the start of the cricket season hasn't quite gotten off. So it was in between the two major sports that are played in Australia. So that's why we had it in that period. And the shorter season does allow some flexibility from an international point of view, that it does free up the players at other parts, other times of the year. I think one of the worries is this year and in future years is the amount of hockey that's being played by players. And, that they definitely have to have some time off, and that's very difficult in Belgium and Holland, where they they go from international back to club and then back to international, and it seems that the season is never ending. So we've got to we really do have to take control of or take care of our players and making sure that they're not playing too much, otherwise they're going to burn out and we're going to have some very short careers.
Mm-hmm. Shane, would you think that a shorter domestic league, an even shorter one than the one that we have already now in Belgium, would benefit the international game?
I'm not sure, because it's hard to know what the ripple effect of changing the domestic competition in Europe would have. I do like what it's done. I like the tradition of it, and I like the club having, the place that a club plays in the life of the player. It's quite a nice thing, having come from New Zealand, where you would play your game and then you would go away from your game and you'd hang out with your friends that were away from hockey. It's a really different setup in Europe, and I quite like that. But what I think may happen is that I think that the domestic competition in Europe may become a bit more of a feeder into an international program, or once you become an international player, you could see short events becoming a bit more of how they would operate normally. So, for example, you might have an international player that stops playing domestic competition, for example, and plays the Indian League, comes and plays the hockey one in Australia, and plays preparation for World Cups and Olympic Games. Maybe that's something that might happen in the future for the European players. Because again, I think, as Colin said, it's they're playing a lot of hockey, and a lot of our guys. This was the first break that they'd had since halfway through 2018. So before the World Cup, and it comes at a cost somewhere.
No, absolutely, yeah. And you want them to be at the peak in July or in August, even August 6th will be the day today.
Yeah, that's right.
Colin, after Tokyo, we will probably see a couple of Australian internationals head back into Europe again, playing this domestic league, the club seasons here. How will this affect your program with the national team for the next pro leagues and the events from the years behind Tokyo?
Well, at the moment, we're supporting players that want to play in Europe for the next European season. We feel that they've had 4 years within the national program. It's good to be away from it and learn some from other coaches and play with some of the Europeans. I think there's some real benefits from them having that experience and then coming back into the national program. So they might be looking at 1 or 2 seasons. I think it's the right time to do it. We know the World Cup's in a little bit later this time. It's not in 22, it's in 23. So they've got a good possibility to have 2 seasons in Europe.
You will be playing different pools in Tokyo. So that means that it could very well be that you end up playing each other in a quarterfinal, which is probably, except from the final, the most stressed game in all of these Olympics. Shane, what would it take to beat Australia in a quarterfinal in Tokyo?
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen, Ernest. I think, it could happen, but I think that if you do some simple calculations about teams that are going well and things like that, I still think that the pools are so different that I think we'd meet later on.
You don't think that you will be fourth in our pool?
I don't think we're going to be fourth in our pool. No, or if we are, then we'd have to, pick up our game. But yeah, look, I think it's always interesting to play Australia, and I think both teams are going to be disappointed if we don't get into the medal rounds, and certainly both of our hopes is that we play that final game, and I think it's for both sides quite a realistic expectation to have that. We've got a lot of respect for Australia, and certainly how they've progressed over the last 4 years has been a real credit to the work that Colin does, and also the way that their team has come forward. I think that they've been one of the teams in the world that's made the most progress over the 4 years. So we do want to play them, but we don't want to play them
too early. But okay, let's suppose then it will be the semi-final or the final. What would it take to beat an Australia?
You've got to score more goals than they do. That's the simple answer. But you've got to be able to match them. And they're an incredibly physical team and really strong. And they, when they're playing at their best, they play such a nice attacking style of hockey. So you have to be able to get on top of that, and you have to be able to match them in the areas that they do well, and then take advantages of the opportunities that you're going to get, because you will get some. So it's, I think. My answer is probably similar answer to
well, okay, Colin, what will your answer be? Score more goals. That one I get.
Shane just answered the question for me. No, look, I think it's with the attacking opportunities both teams will get. They are going. I agree with Shane. They are going to get some opportunities. Both teams are very strong on the penalty corner. So if you don't defend them well, if you're not prepared to run well and defend the penalty corner, then you're going to be exposed in that area. So it's not just from the field opportunities, but it's also from the penalty corner that you've got to do well. And we just don't know. That's really the answer. That we think we can prepare the team in the correct way. We think that they can handle the pressure, but sport's sport, and when they go out there,
absolutely.
You're never really sure. So we're hopeful that players play to their ability, but we know there's some very good hockey players playing for Belgium. Very experienced now. They've had a lot of success over the last couple of years, and we have to go back to Rio, silver medalist there, and then gold medal winning World Cup performance. So there's a lot of experience in that team, and the trick for Shane and myself is that not do too much in a way, or not mess with it too much and let the players play.
Last World Cup, the three most interesting games, from my point, and all ended in shootouts. And I'm talking about the semi-final between Holland and Australia, ending in a shootout where Holland won, and the final obviously also ending in a shootout where this time it was Belgium that won. Are you preparing shootouts?
Yeah, absolutely. And we haven't done so well with our shootouts in Pro League, so there's a lot for us to improve in that area. But, all the teams, we saw it a lot last year. Pro League was good for that development of our game. It added something else. So there's a lot to learn, and I'm sure some of the critical games in Tokyo will come down to shootouts.
Yeah, Shane, what would your preparations for the shootouts are? Obviously, you have an exceptional goalkeeper with Vincent Van Asch in between the posts, but you still have to score them as well.
Yeah, for sure. That's really helpful. But we've had to take some in quite pressure situations, and the guys have done okay there, and some that we expected to do quite well froze a little bit. So, we'll do what every team's going to do, and we're going to practice them and try and practice them under pressure situations and things like that. So we understand how important it is in the modern game. I would have liked for our club competition to have drawn games doing these shootouts, and I noticed in the hockey ones, I don't know if it was seen as a success, but I thought it was quite a good concept to get if you scored a field goal to have a crack at a shootout, because the end product of that is your players get to go through those situations more often and at times of consequence. So, yeah, we'll try and set up some things like that, but our club competition hasn't necessarily helped us in that regard.
Is it an advantage to have this in your domestic leagues as well, Colin, to do these shootouts? What was the experience from the Hockey One series?
Yeah, it was very positive. I'm glad we did it. It added another dimension to the game. It was only for field goals. It wasn't for penalty corners. So if you scored a field goal, you could get an extra bonus goal. So if you just look at it from a hockey point of view, it did add an extra layer to spectator interest. So that was one side of it. But for purely, from a coaching point of view and a playing point of view, it gave a lot more players an opportunity to develop their shootout skills, and also goalkeepers defending it and learning, what techniques work for them from a defensive point of view.
Have you seen some players do exceptional well at the shootouts that you did not think they would do it? Because usually we go to the same kind of players for performing the shootouts in the important tournaments, but now you see multiple players doing it.
Yeah, well, I think, what it did for Hockey One was that everyone had to practice it. So you did, we did find that some players that you wouldn't consider before, that suddenly they were emerging and becoming quite competent at taking shootouts. And of course, you can take them in training, but in a match, it's totally different. So we find out who can handle the pressure.
Okay, guys, to start wrapping it up, because you've got busy schedules out there in Australia training for the start of the Pro League. But okay, let's suppose, you're both number 1 and number 2 in the world, but let's suppose you don't meet each other in the final. Who is the country that you want to avoid in the final, and why? Colin?
I wouldn't say I want to avoid anyone, but obviously, Belgium being so experienced recently, and I know that's not really your question, but look, we're confident that we can play well against every team, but that doesn't mean that we can't lose to every team either. So I think that's. Yeah, every team's a threat. We saw it last time with Argentina going into the tournament. I thought they were the oldest team in Rio, and yet they came out, became champions. So, look, for me, there's so many threats out there. Germany have now got a new coach. What will they show? What are they capable of? And, of course, Netherlands are going to be very strong. They're always very close. India are emerging. How much have they grown? Yeah. So, we can see some progress there. So I don't think I can't say one team, that we're trying to avoid. I think there's just so many threats out there that you can't narrow it down. Okay. It's a complex question.
Yeah. Who will be the dark horse, according to you, Colin, at Olympics? That the team that's going to surprise everybody?
Well, we know each other so well these days. We've got a Pro League to go through, so I don't think there'll be any surprises. New Zealand are capable of beating anyone on their day. So, they had some good performances without winning in Pro League last year, but they are a capable side. So they could come out and, upset anyone in that competition. Perhaps India would be one that, they didn't play Pro League last year. Shane, you had some experience against them, not with your top side, but you did play them leading up to the European Championships. Yeah. So perhaps they are the team that we're a little less have the knowledge on.
Shane, what are your thoughts? Who would you want to avoid in the final in Tokyo? And the same question as well: who will be your dark horse, the surprise in Tokyo?
Yeah, look, I think a little bit the same. Like if we make the final, it doesn't matter who you're going to play. It's always going to be a team that's going really well, or a team that you kind of think once they've made the final, you realise, geez, that's a team maybe that we're going to have difficulties with. It's not easy making the final. So yeah, I don't worry too much about avoiding anyone. I just hope that we play at our best at that moment if we're good enough to get there. In regards to teams, I am going to track Germany a bit because I think that, as Colin said, they've got a new coach. They've done a couple of selection things that are kind of not necessarily brave, but I think that they've made a bit of a statement with some of the players they've selected. And I reckon that they could do pretty well. They certainly played incredibly well against us in the Europeans. That was one of our toughest games of the year, and we needed the crowd behind us to win that one. So we'll watch them, and they'll certainly have done their homework if they play us. Dark horse, I think India it would be a tricky quarterfinal. Let's say that, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they go.
Okay. Guys, thanks very much for your time, and I wish you all the best of luck in the first games of the Pro League against each other. I don't care very much who's going to win, just show us a beautiful game, and then the supporter in me will be very happy with that.
Well, thank you, Ernst, and Shane, we'll see you once we arrive in Sydney.
Yeah, looking forward to it, Colin. Yeah, safe travel.
Thanks for tuning in to Studio Hockey. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast, and as always, enjoy your hockey. Bye-bye.